Afternoon, Alex. Firstly, thanks for sitting down with us today on match day here at Blackwell Meadows. Apologies, the acoustics aren't the best, but we are holed up in a rugby club changing room, so we'll do the best of what we've got. So, Alex, I may be wrong, but I would hazard a guess that I'm probably the first person to interview a Darlington Football Club lead first team performance analyst. Let's confirm that is your job title, and it's definitely not spreadsheet boy or stato, as some of the social media fans termed it when you first joined. And so I'd like to talk a bit about you and your experience, and then in a bit more detail how that falls into the role that you undertake here with the Quakers. So we'll shoot straight into it. And first one from me, Alex, is what led you into the world of data analysis? Was it something that you'd always had an interest in, or is it something that you've fallen into?
It's more something that I've fallen into. My whole career has been around football. Ever since I was a young boy, I've always been playing. And as soon as I sort of turned 16, 17, it's transitioning into the realisation that I'm not going to be a professional footballer. So looking at areas and ways and how I can jump in to still be around that sort of environment. I took a year out after finishing college as I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do. And then one of my friends actually was like, I'm looking at doing a course in performance analysis. And I was like, what's that? And just looked into it further and further and thought, that sounds like a bit of me, to be honest with you. Sort of closest thing I say to my friends if they ask what it is potentially, you look at Match of the Day or Monday Night Football when you've got Jamie Carragher, Gary Neville with a big green screen behind them running through trends in the football game that they've just watched with telestrations all flashing up around them, is sort of how I explain probably the video analysis side of the role.
Okay.
And then we have that second side of the role, which is looking at data to sort of support those subjective elements of the video that I find on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, so we'll get into the details of the role a bit more as we chat this through. But just tell us a bit about your career journey so far. I think most people know that you were at Hereford previously, but just tell us a bit more about, since you started out, like you said, and got involved at sort of 16, 17, the stages that have brought you to where you are now.
Yeah, so I started university at Cardiff Met at 19, and alongside doing that for 3 years I worked with the Cardiff Met first team that play in the Welsh Premier League, so still a very high standard, to be honest. In my second season there, they had qualified by winning one of the League Cups to play in the Europa League qualifiers, which was a massive opportunity and experience for us to get involved in. A huge tournament being the Europa League.
Sounds really good.
So we had two qualifiers, home and away in Luxembourg and then one back here. Sadly we didn't get through, we lost away and then drew at home, but just to have that on your CV as being a part of the Europa League is huge, to be honest. And then building on from there, I had two of my coaches from when I was playing as a junior contact me that they had taken a senior role sort of close to the uni in the Welsh leagues again with a team called Monmouth Town. And that was my sort of first experience at leading and sort of developing my own analysis department, which gave me a lot of sort of key skills that I've built and carried with me even to today of how to run and lead an analysis department. And then sort of going on from there, I carried on my master's degree at Cardiff, which is where our old manager Josh contacted me on LinkedIn about a role at Hereford. So for the last 3 years before joining Darlington, I worked with Josh. And in our first season, we were lucky enough to get all the way through to the FA Trophy final, sadly losing. But I know that Darlington fans felt the same pain as we did losing to Hornchurch, so that's something we can both connect with, to be honest.
But at least we have had a day out at Wembley on more than one occasion, unlike our salubrious neighbours.
Exactly.
So I'm in an age where data analysis and sporting insights perhaps haven't been very prevalent in football at all, but certainly not at our kind of level. Obviously that's changed hugely in recent times, and this is really now quite an integral part of preparations for lots of clubs. Steve mentions quite often in his post-match interviews that he'll be sitting down with you and Terry to decide on what system's best to beat our next opponents. Can you give us a rundown on what a typical week looks like for you? What elements do you look at, and what information is it that you prepare for the management team?
Yeah, of course. At the minute it's been hectic, to be honest, because of the schedule we've had Saturday, Tuesday. So for me, it's all about time management and organisation. I'm cross-referencing loads of different teams all the time, sort of looking 3 to 4 games previous to prepare for these matches. So I'm working in weeks in advance of looking to prepare presentations for the players and the management team. So the first sort of side of things we look at is video and the opposition in and out of possession, their strengths and weaknesses, highlighting what they're good at and how we can nullify that with a game plan. And then on the flip side, what aren't they so good at and how can we target certain players in our team to exploit those areas to be successful. And then the other side is the data side, which I work with a lad called Jay, who supports me on the data side of things, creates reports to support the subjective elements that I see with objective data, and then we look at certain aspects to then collaborate together. We'll then pitch it to Steve and Terry, and then we'll have conversations around maybe tweaking the formation just to exploit the opposition, which I expect the fans might see certain times. We maybe might rotate the midfield slightly in terms of personnel and shape, just to try and get the best and be successful against whoever we're up against.
And that, I've noticed that'll sometimes, that'll happen in game as well. This is live and happening as the match is going on. You'll be there, you'll be looking at the trends and the flows, and there might be communication at that point that something else might help us, exploit something on the pitch.
Yeah, we at half time always come down to show some clips and communicate my thoughts. At times, obviously, they're both very experienced. They'll know when stuff isn't working and needs to when to tweak things. But sort of my role, I've got a different aspect. I'm a lot higher up, so I might see things that they potentially won't see. So I think it's good to always have that cross-reference and communication at half time to discuss and look at areas where we might need to tweak things to be successful in the game.
It's probably fair to say that your time at Darlington so far has been at the two complete ends of the spectrum. A really difficult, challenging time initially when Josh Dowling first brought you to the club. And what I would like to think is probably a different scenario now with performances on the pitch and the positivity that Steve and Terry have injected since they joined the club. You've certainly gone all in with the role, as I know you've fully relocated from Hereford and you now live in the town.
Yeah, that's correct.
You're a local now, local.
Haven't picked up the lingo yet, but
it'll come, don't you worry. So really, what I wanted to talk about next is, how you found your first season here, building your analytics department, as you just talked about there with guys that you collaborate with, how that looks. You've got different processes to consider, and tailoring things to what you want to collect to meet the manager's needs, and then really looking forward from now, how you envisage the process and the setup looking going forward, and if there's any strengths and ideas that you would want to bring to the role that would benefit the wider club, I suppose.
Yeah, of course. So just touching on your first topic there about probably the transition. Obviously, Josh was very sort of data and analysis driven. So the first sort of challenge I've had from transitioning to Steve and Terry was gaining their trust. Josh knew me from previous, but these didn't. So I needed to show that I have a good football knowledge and understanding and give them what they want. We definitely have stripped things back, which I don't see as a negative. We focus on giving the players key information that they can take onto the pitch to be successful. The sort of department here is the first one I've gone into where there's absolutely nothing. So I've had to take processes from my other roles, dotted all around of what's gone well, what hasn't, to try and build a successful department here. And then looking forward, I would like to link and give exposure for analysis to the academy departments and the women's team if they're willing to. We're in discussions with universities to bring in work experience students. We've got one here now called Luca, who's at Northumberland University, so already getting exposure in that aspect. And I think having people around the club that have interest in analysis, it'll only benefit the team in the long run, because we can look at in depth into more aspects of football than potentially what our other teams do. But I think it's definitely becoming more and more prominent in the league. I've worked in this league, this is my 4th season now, and from my first season to now, there's way more teams that have analysis embedded in their processes. So it's how now we can be the best in that department, which I think we're right up there because I've got a very good team behind me.
Excellent. I find the whole aspect of data analysis really fascinating. I'm a bit of a geek myself, so I like to understand and look at the intricacies of it. See, going from where we were to where we find ourselves now, you know, we're riding a good wave of form, and with an upturn in form, of course, confidence grows. And you must see those trends in the data that you analyse. So a question for me would be, you know, can you pinpoint certain things that indicate a gradual improvement in a player's confidence and performance, for example? You know, whether that be kilometres covered or tackles made compared to what normal would be. It's the whole concept that I personally find really interesting, and just love to know a bit more about it in general.
Yeah, so one of the things we did when Steve and Terry first came in was we had a look at effective formations for the team, where we've been most successful from last year all the way through to when they joined, because there's been a lot of different formations played. I think the biggest thing for confidence, as we know the confidence in the camp was low, results weren't going our way, is how can we kickstart that immediately, and going back to a shape that they're familiar with, the 4-4-2 with a sort of tweak to it, really started to seek out more and more impact in the data like you touched on there. Kilometres, sort of distance covered, hasn't really changed too much. I think the lads always work hard, but I think the sort of thing you touched on there, confidence, it breeds more and more output in terms of data. Sort of the main aspects that we look at, even from when we first came in, we've improved our XG, expected goals, and also goals against have gone down, even from October when I joined. But since Steve and Terry have gone, it's gone up and above, and we're working at over 1 goal a game, sort of expected. And some games, I'm trying to think one of them now, Scunthorpe for example, I think we were around 3, which is excellent in games when against defensively. We've been rock solid, and most of the time in games we're expected to see less than 1 goal, which is brilliant. And then sort of touching on maybe a new metric that people may not have heard of at all is called expected threat, XT, which we sort of use in the looking at opposition players, where it's a metric collected from where they are on the pitch and the outputs they perform, so dribbling, crossing, passing, etc. And it'll give them a score, and that will allow us to then highlight what players are the biggest threat, and then we can try and nullify them on the pitch as well. And I think a mix of those really do show an improvement in the team.
There's certainly been a clear improvement in turning form and you know, success in recent weeks, and long may that continue as we've got these last 3 games, starting with this afternoon's game against Southport, of course. Well, Alex, I could probably quiz you all day on this, but I know that you've got a job to do this afternoon. But I'd like to get a chance to chat to you again soon.
Definitely.
The best that you get back to it.
Lovely.
So thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Cheers.